Welcome. In this video we're going to cover tool setting on our Tormach milling center. Now tool setting is going to be a process in which we're telling the machine the length of the different tools that are in our automatic tool changer, which is very important because as our machine programs run and tool changes happens, the machine needs to know that there is a difference in height between the various tools. For example, we could have a very, very large drill chuck with a long drill bit in it, or a very, very short end mill. And if the machine does not know the difference in height between those two tools, we could either be machining air up above the part, or in a much worse case, be bringing this tool over into the vise or into the bed of the machine, causing a tool crash, possibly damaging the machine or damaging the tool. Either way, we want the machine to keep track of the heights of the various tools and adjust accordingly during the program run. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to flip the main power on the machine, which is on the right hand side. And once I throw this switch, my controller software is automatically going to boot up. Now whenever we run this machine, it's important to understand that it is a pneumatic system that controls the tool changes. So we have to have our air compressor on, and we must have our air line opened up going to the machine so that there's power to the pneumatic system. Once my controller software boots up, and I'm now in the Mach 3 controller, it gives me an error message. It says ATC, unable to find ATC on USB ports. Before I do anything on the controller side, I'm going to need to start the machine itself, so in which case I will twist the E-stop and hit the start button, and my machine on indicator light will light up. Now I'm still not connected between machine and controller. What I need to do is come to the lower left corner of my screen. There's a flashing red bar. Typically on this controller, red lights are a bad thing. We want lights to be green. This is flashing red. When I click reset, it will say machine OK. I now have established connection between the two, and you'll notice that computer is lit up. Now when I click OK on this ATC warning menu, it should recognize the ATC controller. It's then going to ask me if it's okay to reference the Z. Now referencing the machine, you'll see when we get into a close-up of this controller screen later in the video, but in my simple run screen I have my X, Y, and Z axis DROs, or digital readouts, and next to them I currently have red lights. Now red lights mean that those axes are not referenced. Before we run any program or perform any operations with the tool changer, we need to reference those axes. So I'm going to tell it OK to reference Z now, and the machine will move up and down, and it's going to reference itself on the Z-axis. And the Z-axis light has now turned green. I'm going to go ahead and click the Ref All button next to my X, Y, and Z axes. So when I click Ref All, the axes are all going to move, and we're going to get the green lights on the DROs. Now the first thing we're going to want to do before we get into any tool setting is we're going to need to clear the spindle. As you can see, a tool has been left in this spindle, and it's very well maybe a situation that you come across in the room where someone has run a program, cleaned up the machine, but has not cleared the tool out of the spindle. So next we're going to take a look at how do we use the controller software to go ahead and store a tool into the carousel. Now we're going to make the assumption here that this tool is one that you're going to be using in your program. Now to use the controller to go ahead and unload a tool from the spindle that has been left in. First off, everything needs to be referenced. We've done that. You can see the DROs are all lit green. The machine OK is green. So green is good. We're prepared to work with the machine. To get into any ATC controls, we're going to go into the ATC menu button at the bottom of the screen. When I click in there, it's going to give me an overhead view of our tool changer carousel. On the right hand side it says tool currently in spindle. Right now T11 is, or tool number 11, is in that spindle. To go ahead and get it back into the spindle, I'm going to click the Store button right next to it. And you'll hear that tool tray come in. It's going to remove the tool. And you can see now tool 11 is back in the carousel. And it says tool currently in spindle 0. The tool is empty. Now that we've removed the tool currently in spindle should read 0. We have an empty spindle. We're ready to go ahead and either load in a new tool, or in this case we're going to take a quick look at what we call the tool table. Now the tool table is this controller's way of keeping track of the heights and diameters of all the different tools. To get to the tool table, you're going to click on the Edit Tool Table button. And this is going to list all the tools that we have. We don't want to be changing this list too much. We've tried to list all the common tools that we're going to use. So what you want to be doing when you're writing your program, if you're unsure of a tool number, come and check the tool table. We're going to be working with, we're going to load in a 4-flute, 1/2-inch diameter flat end mill. Find it here. I see tool number 6 is a 1/2 4-flute end mill. The diameter is entered as 0.5. Currently that tool is not in the carousel. If I take a look at the view of my carousel, I don't see tool number 6 in here anywhere. So we're going to need to go ahead and load that up. On the flip side, after you've written the program, assuming that all of your tool numbers correspond with the tool table, it's going to be important that you have a list. You can generate it right from Mastercam of all the tools that are going to be used in the programs that you're going to be running to create the part. What you then want to be doing is looking at the tool numbers in your tool list. They'll be on the right-hand side or left-hand side, and you're going to want to find that to see if they are listed in the carousel. And then you're going to want to look at the carousel to verify that it is the correct tool. So we have a couple things happening here. We need to ensure that the numbers in our program match the numbers in our tool table, and we're going to need to ensure that the tool numbers in our program are loaded with the correct tools in the carousel. Now I'm going to load up tool number 6. We're going to use that as our example on how to load a tool into the machine and look at the heights and offsets that we need to set. So I'm going to look for an empty slot in the carousel, and it just so happens that I have an empty slot up here. If this were totally full with 10 tools, I would need to locate a tool that's not going to be used in my program and remove it by typing the tool number into the automatic load, unload, and clicking fetch. That would then remove it. In this case, I'm going to use the other side, and I'm just going to use either tray forward or tray reverse to bring the carousel around so that my empty spot is in line with our spindle. So I'll click this a couple times, and my empty spot is now in line with the spindle. I'm ready to go ahead to the bench and get my tool actually set up. Now to set up the tool, we're going to need a couple of items. We're first going to need the tool. I have my 1/2-inch diameter 4-flute end mill. We use the Tormach tooling system, so we're going to need a collet to hold this tool, or a tool holder to hold this tool. We're going to need our granite block, and we're going to need our height gauge. I'm going to start off by loading the tool into the tool holder. It's a good practice to hold this tool with a rag. When putting it in, there are sharp cutting edges there. It can prevent cuts. I'm going to load this up, and I'm going to use these lock with an Allen key. So I'm going to lock the set screw into position. All right, it should be snug. Obviously, we don't want to strip anything, but on the same note, we're going to have a lot of cutting force. We don't want our tool sliding in the tool holder. I'm now going to set up my height gauge, and the first thing I want to do is I want to ensure that the bottoms of my measuring surfaces are clean. so I can wipe them with my hands. Another trick is to take a clean piece of paper and slide the height gauge back and forth on that clean piece of paper. I'm going to make sure that my measuring surface is clean. And I'm going to turn my height gauge on, and before I do anything I want to bring it down, and I want to just touch the granite block with the measuring surface, and I want to zero this thing out. I'm now going to take my tool holder. I'm going to make sure that the bottom is clean. I don't have any metal chips, dust, dirt, anything like that in there. I'm going to put it into the hole in the granite block, and I'm going to bring my height gauge over, and I'm just going to touch it to the top of the cutting edge of the tool. Now this is going to give me a height reading. In this case it is 3.1655. That number is very important because that's going to be the number that we're going to enter into the height column on the tool table. Back to our controller. We've measured the height of our tool. I'm going to go back into the tool table now, and I'm going to find the tool that I'm working with. In this case, it's tool number 6, 1/2 inch 4 flute end mill is what we're calling it. Diameter needs to be set correctly, so we have a diameter entered of 0.5. And I'm going to go under the height column. I'm going to click, and I'm going to double click, I should say, and I'm going to enter the height of that tool. So the current height that I measured is 3.1655. So I enter 3.1655. I'm going to click the apply button at the bottom of the tool table to apply that height, and I'm going to click OK. I would enter the heights of every single tool that I needed to add into the carousel. Now in our tool table, all the tools that are currently loaded, this has been done for already, including tool number 1, which is our setup tool, our height gauge, our touch tool. I'm now going to go to tool currently in spindle. We haven't loaded the tool into the spindle yet, but as long as we're on the controller side. It's tool number 6, so I'm going to click in the dialog box. I'm going to enter 6 and hit the enter key. Now all that's left is to load the tool into the spindle. Once I've done that, I'm going to click store on this controller to add it into the carousel. I'm going to go ahead and load this tool into the spindle. I'm going to make sure that my surfaces are clean. I'm going to press the release button. In this case it is already released, but I'm going to press it and hold it. I'm going to slide my tool into the spindle, pressing it up as far as it will go, and I'm going to hit the lock button. That locks the tool into the spindle. I'm now going to come over to my controller, and I'm going to click store next to the number 6 where it says tool currently in spindle. The tool changer grabs the tool. The tool is now stored in that spindle, ready for use in the program. You would repeat this process for every single tool necessary in your program until your carousel is loaded with everything that you need to machine your part.